against the docks and against the boats. Look, this is Miami, which for much of the week was the major concern. There was fear that Miami would take a direct hit from the eye of Hurricane Irma. I say a direct hit from the eye because Miami's still going to get hit from Hurricane Irma pretty hard. We're expecting it, the strongest winds to come in tomorrow starting at 6 a.m., much stronger than we're seeing right now. Gusts that could be 30, 40 miles an hour, what we're seeing right now, which is why the authorities here are saying, do not take this lightly. Don't think just because the eye may not pass over Miami like was feared for so much of the week, that this is going to be easy going. It won't be. They're still expecting a storm surge here around 6 feet, which would bring it up over where I'm standing right now. They are still expecting wind gusts to be strong, more than 100 miles an hour in some points, which is why there's a curfew out on Miami Beach. They don't want people out, which is why there have been mandatory evacuations, and which why the authorities are saying, if you made plans at Miami Beach, keep them. And don't go home until they tell you it's safe, Anderson, which could be from some time based on the winds we're feeling right now, Anderson.
Yeah, good advice there. John, we'll continue to check in with you. Miguel Marquez is in Punta Gorda, which obviously devastated back in 2004 with Hurricane Charlie. Miguel, talk about the scene there, what you're seeing.
Well, I can tell you that Irma has arrived. The first rain that we are seeing from Irma has just started falling in the last few minutes. The wind is starting to kick up, but it's not much more than a breeze, basically, with a gust every now and again. It actually feels fairly nice. The rain is gently falling at the moment, but clearly it is going to get worse and worse. We had not seen this. We saw a beautiful sunset here tonight, and we could see the dark clouds to the south, but finally it is starting to come this way. It is interesting to watch those maps to see how the storms seem to be coming directly at us, and then they turn very sharply south. People in Punta Gorda are watching this hurricane very closely because, as you mentioned, Charlie devastated this community 13 years ago.
Georgia, and South Carolina could end up picking up, say, 4 to 6 inches of rain. We've noticed the hurricane watches and warnings continue to spread to the north. Hurricane warnings now extending from the northernmost part all the way down to the entire state.
I was able to be joined by Lieutenant General Russell Honore, who, of course, led military efforts. Katrina did such an amazing job there. Unfortunately, and I say that because I enjoy talking to him, but it's always a tough story when he is around and on site. He joins us tonight from Orlando.
Watches in effect for portions of South Carolina as well as Georgia. Anderson?
You talk about that turn. Any way to estimate when that turn north might occur? Because obviously, there are tens of thousands of people watching that very closely because it's going to affect exactly where this thing goes.
Right. Likely it will happen within the next 6 to 12 hours, but you also have to keep in mind that's getting awfully close to when we expect it to cross over the Florida Keys. You've got a couple of things driving it. You've got a high pressure system sitting out here over the open Atlantic. You've got a high pressure sitting right around the Texas coastline. Those two combinations are what's going
Rain starting to fall pretty steadily here in Fort Myers, not particularly strong, but just probably the steadiest rain that we have seen all day, obviously a harbinger of what is to come. Time and time again, authorities are telling people, in a storm like this, don't go outside, don't go to the ocean front to try to take pictures, to look at the storm surge. It's one of the reasons, reporters spend time out here so you can watch it on television. You don't have to go out for yourself and do that. I just want to show you a video that kind of proves the point of those authorities. It's a surveillance camera, observation camera of a person taking pictures of the storm surge at the southernmost point, and you saw what happened to that person. I don't know if we can show it again. They're taking a picture to get a sense the waves get knocked over. That person did get up and walk away, so thankfully it seems like they were okay. But just a sign of just how quickly stuff can happen. It can be a sunny day here, and all of a sudden a torrential rain start, and we are likely to see more and more moments like that, unfortunately, in the next 12 to 24 hours. I want to go back to John Berman, who is in Miami for us. John, what kind of winds are you seeing there? Because when we started broadcasting around 8 o'clock, you were already getting very, very strong gusts of winds there.
Yeah.
Consistently been like that most of the evening, Anderson. I should make clear, I have no interest in being that guy in that video you just showed. Not even for you, and not even for TV. But the wind gusts now, 40 miles an hour, I would say, fairly regularly, gusting higher than 50 in some locations in Miami. I think you can tell it's pretty strong right now. Some of the strongest we've seen, so much that, I have to lean in a little bit. You can see behind me, that boat, which we've been looking at all night, is rocking a lot more than we've seen. And the tide is coming up as well. In the water, we can see it being pushed up against the docks and against the boats. Look, this is Miami, which for much of the week was the major concern. There was fear that Miami would take a direct hit from the eye of Hurricane Irma. I say a direct hit from the eye because Miami's still going to get hit from Hurricane Irma pretty hard. We're expecting it, the strongest winds to come in tomorrow starting at 6 a.m. Much stronger than we're seeing right now. Gusts that could be 30, 40 miles an hour, what we're seeing right now, which is why authorities here are saying, do not take this lightly. Don't think may not pass over Miami like was feared for so much of the week, that this is going to be easy going. It won't be. They're still expecting a storm surge here around 6 feet, which would bring it up over where I'm standing right now. They are still expecting wind gusts to be strong, more than 100 miles an hour in some points, which is why there's a curfew out of Miami Beach. They don't want people out, which is why there have been mandatory evacuations. They're saying, if you made plans at Miami Beach, keep them. And don't go home until they tell you it's safe, Anderson, which could be from some time based on the winds we're feeling right now, Anderson.
Yeah, good advice there. John, we'll continue to check in with you. Miguel Marquez is in, which obviously devastated back in 2004 with Hurricane Charlie. Miguel, talk about the scene there, what you're seeing.
Tell you that Irma has arrived. The first rain that we are seeing from Irma has just started falling in the last few minutes. The wind is starting to kick up, but it's not much more than a breeze, basically, with a gust every now and again. It actually feels fairly nice. The rain is gently falling at the moment, but clearly it is going to get worse and worse. We had not seen this. We saw a beautiful sunset here tonight, and we could see the dark clouds to the south, but finally it is interesting to watch those maps and see how the storms seem to be coming directly at us, and they turn very sharply south. Florida are watching this hurricane very closely because, as you mentioned, Charlie devastated this community 13 years ago. The path that Irma is currently on, it's just to the west of this community, and that puts them just off that right-hand side, that upper right-hand side of the eye wall. So people are very concerned. They are calling for a very big storm surge here, 10 to 15 feet, basically a giant wave of water that comes in from the ocean and washes in with it in relatively short order. That's why they've had to evacuate about 60% of the county here. They only have enough high land here for 3 shelters. All of them jam-packed now. They're saying they have 5 other shelters in the county north of here that residents here can use if you need shelter.
Yeah. The difficulty, of course, is getting there. Is there any public transportation tomorrow, that you know of, to get to those shelters for people who don't have access to vehicles?
There is public transportation that I know of, but there are vehicles available. There's emergency vehicles and others that can help transport people on a sort of a one-off basis to places if necessary, so they can make that happen. It's not a huge Miami-Dade like situation. It's a much smaller population here, so it is somewhat easier to deal with those situations. So they do have some ability for that. If people are in dire necessity and they show up to a shelter that is full, they will take them in any event. If their car is out of gas, if they're elderly, if they're disabled somehow, they will be able to get them in. Anderson.
Yeah, that's some good news. Miguel Marquez, thanks very much. Again, that gentle rain that Miguel is experiencing, I think that's the same band that we are experiencing here. And it is pretty gentle. I mean, at the height of a hurricane, the wind, the rain is coming in horizontally, and some of the hurricanes I've been in, it feels like pinpricks at times. It's moving so fast, it's hitting you so hard. We're going to take a short break, and our coverage continues.
Going to be driving it to push that right-hand turn over the main peninsula of Florida. Then you also have that high that's over the main portion of the U.S. that's going to break away. That's what's going to allow the storm, once it crosses into places like Georgia and Tennessee, and take its track from there. But ultimately, Anderson, again, 6 hours versus 12. We know it's likely going to happen in that time period. But if it happens 6 versus 12, there's a huge difference there on who actually will end up taking the ultimate landfall. So again, while we have a range, the opposite ends of that range could mean huge differences for several cities.
Senator Allison, let's bring us up to date.
Right, Anderson. So we take a look at what we've got for right now. Again, you've got some imagery here where we can see the latest on Irma. One's right now 125 miles per hour, gusting up to 155 miles per hour. The movement, it's been what we call wobbling, okay, where it's going back and forth between west and north and west and north. The question is, when does it finally really sharp turn to the north? We focus on the maximum wind gusts. Notice for the most
the county government employees, some other response agencies, and everybody is pretty settled in pretty well tonight.
Yeah, obviously, you know, a lot of people woke up. They didn't expect the storm along the West Coast in the way that it's going to, and change their mind about riding out the storm, decided to seek shelters. You know, the governor put out an appeal for as many as 1,000 volunteer nurses, particularly to help out in special needs shelters. Do you know if you have enough personnel, particularly in those special needs shelters, to help all those people who need assistance?
We have them in and settled. We have spent a lot of time in our shelter making sure that we had all types of equipment and resources available to them. We're using a lot of our Collier County EMS paramedics, some of our local fire paramedics, nurses, and the state of Florida has been bringing some skilled nursing groups from out of. We're doing pretty well. Obviously, we've got another day or two ahead of us to try to rotate through, but our special needs shelter is robust, although we weren't expecting the census that we have, but we're working to accommodate that.
And for those who wake up in the morning in your county and decide, you know what, I don't like the way the storm surge is going to be, it's worse than I thought it's going to be, and decide to try to go to shelter, how do they find out what shelters are still open and are still able to receive people? And do you have any advice for people who don't have access to a vehicle in terms of how they could possibly get to a shelter? Because I know a lot of, obviously, the public transportation has stopped for a variety of reasons late this afternoon.
Well, and we do have a telephone hotline, a number that people can call, and we are looking at some alternative resources. And we may have some periods tomorrow where we can do some bus pickups. We'll certainly work with the community, find some additional resources. We really think that the bulk of the folks that wanted to be in a shelter are squared away there tonight. So we'll continue to look at we have the entire Emergency Operations Center up with a lot of options and a lot of resources. So we'll do our very best to support those needs.
Oh, Dan Summers, I appreciate all your efforts. Thanks very much. Stay safe. We're going to take a short break as our coverage from Fort Myers and all across Florida tonight continues.
I'm Jessica.
Yes, this will be our peak maximum wind gusts from 100 miles per hour. But say up around Fort Myers, 136, even Tampa going to be in the triple digits, right around 116 miles per hour. The track itself over portions of the Keys and then ride the western coast, making a very close call towards Naples, Fort Myers, even into Tampa. So those are going to be the cities of concern going forward in about the next 36 to 48 hours. Here's a look at the forecast radar. So this shows you not just where it's headed, but where some of the heavy rain is going to be as well. When we get to Sunday morning, this is when we really start to see incredibly heavy downpours for cities like Miami into Fort Myers. Then we push into Sunday afternoon, Tampa starting to get some incredibly heavy rainfall, and then the system itself begins to make its way into portions of Georgia and also into South Carolina. Overall rainfall totals, we're talking widespread 6 to 10 inches of rain, but it could even be slightly higher than that, and especially when you get some of those outer bands where you could end up getting incredibly heavy downpours for several hours at a time. But the rain spreads even farther north, so even states like Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina could end up picking up, say, 4 to 6 inches of rain. We've noticed the hurricane watches and warnings continue to spread to the north. Hurricane warnings now extending from the northernmost part all the way down to the entire state. And we now have tropical storm watches in effect for portions of South Carolina as well as Georgia. Anderson.
You know, you talk about that turn. Any way to estimate when that turn north might occur? You know, they're watching that very closely because it's going to affect exactly where this thing goes.
Right. Likely it will happen within the next 6 to 12 hours. Keep in mind that's getting off, expected to cross over the floor. You've got a couple of things driving. You've got a high pressure system sitting out here over the open Atlantic. Pressure sitting right around the Texas coastline. Those two combinations are what's going to push that right-hand turn over the main peninsula of Florida. Have that high that's over the right in the main breakaway. That's what's going to allow the storm, once it crosses into places like Georgia and Tennessee, and take its track from there. But ultimately, Anderson, again, 6 hours versus 12. We know it's likely going to happen in that time period. But if it happens 6 versus, huge difference there on who actually will end up taking the ultimate landfall. So again, while we have a range, the opposite ends of that range could mean huge differences for several cities.
Keys, and maybe most importantly on the west and when. Allison.
That's right, John. So we take a look at the current numbers that we have right now. Irma is a Category 3 storm and a very strong Category 3 storm.
Well, it's interesting to note,
Right now,
the National Hurricane Center is now updating us every hour. Unprecedented, I believe, happened today. We'll have to check on this. But because we had Jose, Katia, and Irma, typically the National Hurricane Center handles all of these advisories, but they're getting overloaded. So NOAA Storm Prediction Center took over command for Katia and Jose, so the National Hurricane Center can solely focus on Irma. I believe that's unprecedented. So they're updating us every hour now. Little fluctuation, another 5 miles per hour, even though it went back up. That's not a big concern because we've got plenty of time, unfortunately, that that's going to happen. Only 100 miles now. That's what we're going to talk about as we get in here. There's a couple of factors. We're going to break it down with a Google Earth for you as well. But first, everybody's wondering what happened. I mean, why did this make such a dramatic shift come this morning? We knew that there were going to be shifts. Earlier in the week, it was shifting east and then west a little bit. And again, the track, which will come out at 11 p.m., may differ somewhat. But let's go back because we had a massive area of high pressure over the Atlantic. It's called the Barbuda High. And we thought for a while there that come today and tomorrow, what we thought we would see is this area of high pressure was either going to break down, but because it's held its strength, the winds that circulate clockwise kept Irma on this westerly track to the south. Another trough dropping in from the northeastern U.S. we thought would be able to pick this system up sooner, but it's not as strong as we did. So it's not a big force northward just yet. We still have a west-northwesterly movement. So that is a big concern right now. It's not going to slide in the Gulf. High pressure is going to halt its progress that way. At some point, it's got to go to the north. Let me show you, break this down. There have only been 3 Category 5s to ever make landfall in the United States. The last one 5 years ago, Camille in '69. And then in 1935, before they even named these hurricanes, it was the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 that threw the Keys and isolated Key West and the Keys from the rest of Florida. As we get in closer here, there's a couple of things that could happen. We could have a landfall in this direction here. We could have a landfall over here in Key West. Understand, because when we get in closer and you take a look, let's get into the Keys Naval Station. There is one road in and one out. This again could isolate in the days ahead. In the 1935 Labor Day hurricane, unfortunately, there was a story of a packed train on a train track that did not know that the storm was coming. Many did not, and it unfortunately knocked in several fatalities. If we get in closer now, I want to go back and let's get into Marco Island because look at the real estate. When you get in the area of green, it's more wetlands down toward the south and the southwest of Florida. That's fine. There's not many roads. In fact, Alligator Alley is one of the only ones. If we get in even closer, magnitude of real estate and homes that will be inundated with over 9-10 feet of water. If we continue now onward, we can move up toward Naples. Notice when you have a storm surge of this magnitude, many do not understand that it's not just coming over the beaches and over the dunes. It can go in several miles. Coming up in the next half hour, we're going to break down the storm surge inundation map for you that's from the National Hurricane Center, and you'll notice how far in the water goes. And we're talking 10, 12 miles. Something to take lightly. Now the problem in Tampa, if the track makes its way, and right now we would believe it will be somewhere out here toward Tampa, more in this westerly track, Anderson, and stays off the shore, that's probably the worst case scenario for Tampa, because this inundation surge will move up into these areas and it'll be even greater than anyone expected. That track. I'm more concerned north now, because then what we're going to find is the winds coming around on the backside will come in from the west. So once you think that the storm is past and everything is fine, you're going to get inundated again. And other end of that eye, there's a wide range of winds, and that surge will continue if the storm as well. A lot of concerns in the hours and days ahead. Again, as we continue to monitor this, we're the lead turn, because until that happens, there's not a whole lot that we can do. A landfall. Hurricane Center. These are the best of the world. The men and women who work here are the best in the world. So we will see what the models do. We will see if there's more of a shift westward. There is no best case scenario here, because even people in the southeast and areas of Miami up toward Boca Raton, if you think that you're in the clear here, unfortunately, our tornado watches will start increasing off toward areas of the north and northeast, and it'll continue that way all the way on the Carolina coast. Anderson.
Tom, I really appreciate that level of detail seeing in the Florida Keys and also in Tampa. Really gives, I think, our viewers a sense of some of what to look for tomorrow and some of the dangers, not just of the storm, but also of the aftermath. As you said, people think the worst is over, and then depending on the winds, depending on where it's coming from, more water could be coming in. We'll continue to check in with you, Tom, and as we await an update on the track of the storm. John Berman, of course, standing by still in Miami. He joins us now. We're seeing some light rain here. It has been quite windy, though, for you throughout the evening.
Yeah, look, every time I think there's going to be a break here, and right now the rain has let up, we get one of these giant wind gusts that almost takes me off my feet, and it will get much worse as the hours continue, looking to be at its absolute worst here in Miami sometime after 6 a.m., 6 all the way until noon tomorrow. It's going to be very, very rough here. Look, Tom Sater, you guys were talking about, whether or not Miami is in the clear. It's clearly we're not in the clear here in Miami. We've had these wind gusts over 40 miles an hour, up to 50 in some cases. Heavy, heavy rain. And here, just like everywhere else, Anderson, there is concern about the storm surge. There's this boat that's been behind me rocking all night long. And I don't think it's going to get any better for that boat as the hours continue, as the waters continue to push in. We're on one of these waterways. Miami Beach, which is more low-lying, is out past me that way. Then there's this intercoastal waterway, and the water here will rise. If it goes up 6 feet, it would be above where I'm standing in some areas in downtown Miami. But downtown Miami would see some water, which would be a serious cause. Why the authorities here are saying, continue, please take this very seriously as the night goes on, and don't think about coming home. If you've evacuated, if you're in a shelter inland, stay there. Stay there until the authorities tell you it's safe to come back, because this will go on for some time. Anderson?
Some people who had evacuated from Miami to end up in Tampa woke up today and thinking maybe I should head back to Miami. Again, one of those difficult decisions people have to make. We're going to take a short break. We're going to talk to the mayor here in Fort Myers about what he is anticipating in the hours ahead. We'll be right back.
Miles per hour, just 5 miles per hour stronger, and it would be a Category 4 storm. So I want you to understand, you're talking a difference of 5 miles per hour here. So don't focus on the category number so much, but the intensity of the winds. Movement is west at about 9 miles per hour, but we have started to see at least a slight shift off to the north as well. One of the big concerns is going to be maximum wind gusts. Take a look at some of these numbers. Key West, we're talking around 138 miles per hour. This will be at the peak as the storm is crossing over that region. Naples and Fort Myers also in that 130 to 130 mile per hour range. Even Tampa likely to be around 116. Now the East Coast, while it may not be as strong, you're still talking pretty strong wind gusts. In fact, Orlando looking at 95 miles per hour for their peak wind gust. Storm surge is also going to be a huge threat with this particular storm. We got some updated numbers a few hours ago that really made these numbers rise. In fact, especially in the southwest portion, say Naples down towards Key Largo, we're talking 10 to 15 feet. Miami down towards Key West, 5 to 10 feet. Even around the Fort Myers area, you're talking 6 to 10 feet. The numbers, however, you have to understand what they mean. So let's take a look at this, for example. Just to talk about storm surge, 10 feet is what an average first-story building is. So if you have storm surge of 10 feet, and keep in mind, some places we're actually forecasting higher than 10 feet. Some areas it could be as much as 15 feet, which means it would start creeping into the second story of a home or a business or something like that. But this is just the storm surge. Now you also have to factor in the waves. This is where true inundation takes place, because it's not just the amount of rain, or not just the amount of water that has been pushed in from the storm surge, but those waves, the crests of those waves can add even a couple more feet on top of that. So you talk about 5 to 6 feet. You know, if you've got a person that's 6 feet tall, you are now completely submerged underwater, and you've got the waves moving everything around. This is where it gets very concerning, especially those higher amounts too. You could have cars submerged. So if you take that car out onto a street as the storm surge is pushing in, you will have absolutely no control over that vehicle, even though the car may not be fully submerged at that point. Now, when we talk about the track, this is the part that everybody is concerned about, because you want to know where landfall is expected to be. However, because of the size of the storm, at this point, that really is just semantics. Everybody around Florida is going to get some impact from this storm. Some will just get like bigger impacts than others, namely the winds. Here's what we expect. We do expect it to increase back to a Category 4 strength storm as it crosses over the Keys and continues its way up the west coast. Right now, landfall could be anywhere from, say, Naples to Fort Myers, even up around Tampa. And Tampa is a huge city. A lot of people in Tampa did not necessarily evacuate, especially several days ago, thinking this was mostly going to be an East Coast main landfall of a storm. But that is now starting to change. Then we see the track kind of push further into the north, states like Alabama, Georgia, as well as Tennessee. And the other thing, John, to note is we are still talking a pretty good amount of rain. We've talked about storm surge. We've talked about wind. But don't count out the rain. We could be looking at widespread rainfall totals of 6 to 12 inches of rain.
All right, Allison Chinchar, an important forecast, the point that people should really listen to there, where you're talking about.
That's right. So one of the things that has just changed at the top of the hour is the forward movement, the direction in which the storm is moving. Right now, we're starting to see a change from due west to west-northwest. That may seem very subtle, but that's what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for that shift in which it is going to start to make that northward trek towards the state of Florida. And we're starting to at least get a little bit of a glimpse of that. Again, it's not a sharp turn, at least as of this point, but we're starting to see that change over. Now, one of the main concerns with this storm is still going to be incredibly strong winds. At landfall point, for a lot of these areas, these are your maximum wind gusts you're going to be dealing. 138 miles per hour in Key West, 136 in Fort Myers, even Tampa going to be looking at 160.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. We've been talking to so many officials throughout the day, and we continue with that. The mayor of Fort Myers very kindly agreed to come out again for us tonight. Randall Henderson, thanks so much for being with us. First of all, you and I, before we went on air, were talking about a potential silver lining. As bad as this storm is going to be, and who knows what it's going to mean for Fort Myers, there may be a plus to some of it.
Well, I'm encouraged in this way, Anderson, since it is coming further west, this is going to open up channels to the east to get provisions into us post-Irma, which is going to be essential for meeting the needs of our citizens. So I'm encouraged about that.
As a leader, you're already looking beyond. You have to look
days ahead. We're staging. We have energy companies and petroleum companies and food and rations and all those things positioned and ready to deliver once we're able to do so.
You were telling me also before in the commercial break, you ran into 3 of your neighbors today and convinced them to get out, and this was just late this afternoon.
I took a short break to get my own affairs in order, to mobilize, and in doing so, neighbors and implored them to evacuate and explain why And I'm happy to announce that they took it very serious, and they're on their way to Gainesville, to Atlanta, to seek refuge.
I feel like we were seeing that just a lot today. People, again, who woke up realizing it's a different storm now, thinking you could ride it out, and then throughout the day they started to think, oh, you know what, I better get out of here.
I'm so proud of our citizens for taking this serious, Anderson. This is an epic situation on our hands. Never American history, and we're taking it serious, and we're working vigilantly to. We can repair tangible things. We cannot repair a life.
And just again, I mean, I've asked this question to a lot of people, but I do think it's important for those who don't have access to vehicles, who may be less fortunate, even homeless who decide tomorrow, I think I should try to get shelter. Probably should have done it sooner, but is there any way for them to get to a shelter?
It is not too late. Please dial 211. We'll get help to you. We can get transport. We can get you to a safe place.
And bottom line, for those people watching tonight in this area, what's your message?
My message is be vigilant. If there was ever a time to be bold, now's the time to be bold. Be decisive. Take action.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody here and throughout Florida. Ed Lavandera is now back in Naples. He was drove over to Marcos Island. He is back in Naples. What's it like there now? Because obviously that is a place that, according to estimates, could be expecting as much as 10 to 15 feet, depending on the exact track of the storm.
Well, if there is good news emerging from Naples, is that the mayor of the city told us this afternoon that he believes that many, perhaps most of the people here in Naples evacuated in the days even before the track started moving west of this hurricane. So that is the good news. If you look outside as we drive around here, the city streets empty, and it has been like this throughout the day, Anderson. Many of those people, as the mayor believes, had evacuated earlier in the week when it was clear that Hurricane Irma was going to make a significant impact here in South Florida, and many of those people started evacuating. So there's some 27 shelters that are open throughout this Collier County down here around Naples, and we're told that 3 of them still have availability, and not too late to get to those locations. But we also just ventured down to Marco Island, popular vacation spot, an island where there's some more than 16,000 people that live there full time. We spoke with the police chief, and I asked him if it's too late to evacuate, and this is what he had to say.
Too late. It's called, what we say, it's right now we're at shelter in place. Or you would do what we ask people to do if they're in a home, is the vertical evacuation. That means if they have a second story, they go to high above the water line. If they're in a single family home or a 1-story home, we ask that they get to a neighbor's house that has a second story where they can get higher above the water line.
And Anderson, as we drive along one of the main streets here in Naples tonight, you can see actually just that spot right there you saw on your right, one of the few places that is open, a sports bar that we were told is going to be open till about 2 o'clock this morning. But as we continue driving, you see a number of the businesses boarded up. And they have been like this, as I mentioned, Anderson, throughout the day. This town was described by the mayor as simply a ghost town at this point. Anderson?
Yeah. Ed, be careful out there for you and your crew driving along those roads in Naples for us tonight. Randy Kay is up in Tampa, which is about a 2-hour drive in normal times, I believe, 1.5 to 2 hours from Fort Myers. Randy, just, I talked to the mayor of Tampa earlier today, who said that up until today, based on the track of this storm, which they thought was going to be more of an eastern storm, Tampa was kind of looking at the resources that they could send to other places that needed help. Today, with the storm moving further west, they realize now they are in the line that they may need to be the ones needing folks from other communities to help them.
Yeah, in fact, Anderson, we talked to somebody from the Red Cross just a short time ago, and they're first moving their resources here to Tampa because they moved them all to Miami. So now that Tampa is back in the track, they're trying to get situated here. But I got to tell you, when we pulled into Tampa just earlier this evening, it was a ghost town. There was no traffic as we made our way from where you are in Fort Myers up to here. There was nobody on the streets. There was nobody on the highway on 75 North. It's really, really quiet here, and the air is beautiful. We had a beautiful sunset, but everybody here knows the storm is certainly coming. And as you know, they also know that in Fort Myers. As we made our way here, we passed this massive shelter, this Germain Arena, which is the hockey arena, just on the edge of Fort Myers there. We could see it from the highway, and there were thousands of people lined up trying to get inside there, trying to get away, trying to find safety from Hurricane Irma. And that is mainly because they too saw that the track changed. They were planning to ride it out at home, so they decided to try and get inside into the shelter. And they brought everything with them, everything that they love, their families, their dogs, their cats, you name it. They had canned food bags, they had sleeping bags, anything they could just to try and ride it out inside this shelter. And they waited for hours, some of them 4, 5, 6 hours. Here's just a sampling of what some of them told us, Anderson.
Every time you looked at the map.
Yeah, we've been like
trying to figure out.
Should we go to Atlanta? No, we'll go to Kissimmee. No, we'll stay at my cousin's house. No, we'll go to another shelter. Should we stay in our house? No, now we're at this shelter.
Do you feel like you waited too long to decide?
Yeah, totally. I wanted to leave on Monday.
My fault.
It's like if it's the biggest hurricane ever, just leave and then you're not stuck. Gas was great on Monday.
How long have you been waiting in line?
About 4 hours.
Is this your only hope for shelter from Irma?
Well, yes, with animals, yes, it is, yeah. Unfortunately, things are closing fast.
You're at the end here. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's all right. I came with my elderly neighbor who's 87 and couldn't walk well, so he went to the front of the line, and I hope to somehow find him in there.
I got to tell you, people had a really good attitude, like that last woman you just saw there. She said that, you know what, she's a camper. She's camped her whole life. She's ready for this. She's ready to go inside. We talked to a lieutenant from the Florida Highway Patrol. He says that he was trying to make it as comfortable for everyone inside. It could hold 8,000. When we were there, about 1,000 people had already moved in. He said that it would have air conditioning, clean water, food, snacks, whatever these folks needed. But Anderson, I got to tell you, as we walked through that line, which really wound through that entire parking lot, there was this look of desperation on so many of these people's faces. They didn't know if they could get inside. They didn't know that there was that much space at the time. And they really didn't have anywhere else to go. Many of them had waited too long, or they just couldn't get out of town. And it was tough to see. But it sounds like a lot of them, perhaps most of them, or maybe even all of them, did get inside that shelter, Anderson.
Yeah, that's good news. Go to Donnie Lee, he's the chief of police in Key West. Chief, thanks so much for joining us. What's your biggest concern tonight as you await this storm? It's about 100 miles from Key West.
Well, my biggest concern is what we're going to find tomorrow when the sun rises, and we're able to start responding, hopefully at some point, to calls for service and assessing and stuff here. There's still, far too many people that remain on the island that we're concerned about for their welfare and their well-being. So, we just don't know what to expect, really.
Do you have a sense of how many people have decided to ride out the storm? And it's always a difficult thing to kind of estimate. It's not like people kind of register. Do you have any idea?
We don't have exact numbers, but there's still thousands of people that remain here on the island. I mean, our population is 25,000, so we know that there's still thousands of people who decided to stay. We did everything possible to urge and beg everyone to evacuate, and unfortunately, not everyone made the best decision, and those decisions today have life and death consequences that are here at their own risk, because we're hunkered down in the police department. We already have tropical storm force winds. We're not going to put our police officers and first responders at risk anymore. The hospitals are closed. They've been closed for 2 days. There's no ambulances, no fire. So, people are all, right now, they're out there on their own to fend for themselves right now, unfortunately.
Chief, during the worst of the storm, obviously, as you said, when you're hunkered down and not able to go out, if 911 calls are coming in, are those just kind of registered and kind of put in order of priority so that when you are able to go back out, you start to respond to those? Is that how that works?
You're right. All the 911 calls are recorded, and we're also, logging them in by hand as well. And as you said, we're just going to have to prioritize them when we're able to respond and start addressing each one.
And of course, mobility of the roads, you got to make sure the roads are clear before you can even respond in some areas. Chief, we'll let you go. I know you got a lot of work ahead of you. Thanks so much for talking to us, and wish you the best for all of you first responders. Stay safe. We're going to take a short break. More ahead.
15 miles per hour at its strongest point for the storm. The track still does take it along the west coast, but it's likely going to make its first landfall, if you will, in the U.S. over the Florida Keys. Exactly where, that is still yet to be determined. We have to wait to find out how quickly the storm makes that sharp turn to the north to really be able to tell exactly where the storm is going to go. It's then likely to go along places like Naples, Fort Myers, into Tampa, and then eventually it will move all inland and then push towards the states like Georgia, Alabama, and into Tennessee. One of the key things that we expect for this storm is that it will re-intensify back to a Category 4 storm. The main reason for that, take a look at how warm the water is in this region, upper 80s. That is the perfect fuel for a storm like this to be able to be expected to do before it finally makes landfall. Now, we've been hearing a lot of this. People want to know, what is the timing for a lot of these cities in Florida? So let's take a look at Tampa, for example. Tropical storm winds will have already arrived in some of these areas by tomorrow afternoon. Hurricane force winds will likely already be in Tampa by tomorrow evening. Rainfall could be looking at 6 to 8 inches of rain and the storm surge around 5 to 8 feet. Now we move to Naples, a little bit farther south of Tampa. Tropical storm winds will arrive early tomorrow morning. Hurricane force winds could arrive, say, just shortly after sunrise on Sunday. Then we talk about rainfall. This is where we could be looking at really heavy amounts of rain. We're talking nearing a foot of rain, and some of the areas just outside of Naples could pick up, say, as much as 15 inches of rain. Storm surge is also going to be a big factor, 10 to 15 feet for this region. Here's a look at the radar going forward to show you not just the direction, but also where those